So, any of you that read my blog regularly will know that I'm a big pasta fan. I could eat pasta most days of the week. I have to confess, I don't regularly or routinely make my own pasta. There are so many good pastas out there that you can get, both dried and fresh, and it is a bit of a faff. You know, it's like bread. It's one of those things. You can make your own, and it is super amazing when you do make your own, but who can really be bothered most of the time? But you should do it at least once, because it's nowhere near as time consuming as making bread, and it really is completely different to any sort of shop bought pasta, even the best quality. And you really don't need much. So I have pasta flour here. This is just very fine milled, sort of grade 00 or something like that. This actually just says pasta flour on it, but the idea is that it's very fine milled. You also need some eggs, and I have added to my flour a pinch of salt. You don't even need to add the salt, you could just have eggs and pasta flour. I have, the basic rule of thumb when making pasta is 100 grams of flour to 1 large egg. So I have 300 grams of flour in here, so I'm going to add to that 3 eggs. I find that pasta flours vary hugely, and some you will need slightly more flour, and sorry, losing my words. Pasta flours vary hugely. Some you'll need slightly more liquid, so you could add another egg yolk if you think that it's not quite wet enough to bring together as a dough, and some flours you'll need slightly more, slightly less, so you might need to add some more flour to dry it out. But about 1 egg to 100 grams is a good place to start. I'm really rambling now. I'm really distracted because Sausage, our dog, for those of you that don't know, is flying around the kitchen. I think he needs to go out for a walk, and I'm trying to focus on the camera, and all I can see is him going vroom. I might actually just let him out into the garden and come back to this. Bear with me. Okay, he is now running around in the patio outside. Sorry if that last bit was really rambly and all over the place. Okay, so we have our 3 eggs in 300 grams of flour here. Just going to bust the yolks, and I'm just going to start to bring it together with a spoon. You could use a dough hook and a mixer to do this, but to be honest with you, it's pretty easy just to do it by hand. Okay, once you're at the stage where you can't really do much more with the spoon, let's get your hands dirty and bring it all together. Just keep bringing it around and pressing it down on itself. It will, all the moisture will come together. Okay, so this is what I was saying before. I've added 3 large eggs to 300 grams, and we've got a fairly good bundle of dough coming together, but there's still a fair bit of quite dry material in the bottom, and it's a bit flaky. So what I'm going to do is I'm not actually going to add another whole egg. I'm just going to split an egg and add an extra egg yolk. Okay, there we go. Egg yolk in. Push that in. This is where you might actually get quite messy once you've added a bit more liquid. Okay, that's looking much better. Bowl to one side. Alright, so I might not have been lazy and actually mix this by hand, but I am going to be lazy and I am not going to knead it by hand or roll it by hand. You can, of course, knead it. I mean, you're kind of meant to knead it by hand, but I find pasta dough really tough to knead. So unless I make up a big batch and I put it in a dough hook and let the dough hook knead it, I actually use the rolling machine to help knead the dough. And I'm not doing that by hand. Trusty KitchenAid with a roller attachment. So this one has 8 settings, one being the widest. A bit of old dry pasta in there, lovely. One being the widest, and it goes all the way down to 8, which is very, very thin. So what I'm going to do is put this one on. I'm not actually going to try and knead this lot of dough at once, because it's a fairly hefty piece. So I'm going to slice it in half, wrap one half in cling film, just keep it nice and moist and stop it from drying out. And I'm going to knead this using the thickest setting, so number 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep putting it through the roller and folding it and put it back through and folding it and putting it back through. So first of all, what I'm going to do is slower setting. You can, of course, by the way, knead this by hand And you can either use one of those pasta rollers where you use your own muscle under your own volition, you crank the handle if you're feeling particularly gunsy, bicep-y, or of course you can, if you're feeling really strong, roll out and knead entirely by hand and using a rolling pin. It's what the Italian mamas would have done, but I am not feeling that strong at all. God bless kitchen gadgetry, that's all I'm saying. So I'm going to start on the lower setting. I hope you can hear me over this still. And just push it through, don't worry, it's going to come out really bitty and crumbly at first, it's absolutely fine. Woo. I know there are probably chefs out there sort of screaming, what on earth are you doing with that pasta dough? This is just my very lazy girl technique. This is actually coming out particularly bitty, which of course it would for camera. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just sort of pile these on top of each other and give them a press down. This is not a good start. It usually actually comes out a bit bitty, but at least in a sheet. This hasn't even managed to go through in a sheet, but there you go. You may as well see the worst that it can be. So if it happens to you, you're not thinking, oh my God, I've done something hideously wrong. Okay, back through, see if this time's any better. Here we go. This is how it normally comes out. So with this at this stage, what I'm going to do is fold it in half and fold it in half again and keep putting it back through. And I'm going to put that through 10 times like that. Okay, so that was number 10, I think. What I'm now going to do is, rather than fold it in half and in half again, I'm just going to fold it in half once and do that another 10 times. I know this does seem laborious, but trust me, it's much easier than hand kneading your own pasta dough. Okay, so I totally lost count there, but I think that's about 10. You'll see that your pasta dough is now much smoother and slicker, and it's a really lovely consistency. So that's the kneading over with. Now what we're going to do is actually roll it. So as I said, this roller goes up to 8. 8 is very thin. I can barely see between as I look down. If you were making something like a fresh tagliatelle or some fresh fine spaghetti, then I would go all the way to 8. But I find with a lot of other pasta, it's just too thin to really work with. So I actually only go to 6, and I'm going to make some, what am I making? Ravioli. I'm going to make some ravioli out of this. So I don't want it to be too thin, otherwise it's going to burst when it cooks, and it won't be strong enough to support the filling. So what we're going to do now for the rolling is exactly the same, but I'm going to go through, starting at the widest and building my way up. And I'm going to, without no folding now, I'm going to put the dough through twice at every setting until we reach 6. And that's it. Okay, so I'm halfway through. What I'm going to, I've just finished number 3. What I'm going to do now is actually flour the dough. This is just going to make it much easier to handle and prevent it from sticking on itself as it gets a bit longer. So toss some flour over, same flour as before, and really give it a good rub into the surface. Turn it over, do exactly the same. There we go, and I'm actually going to just square off this end because we're not going to need that scraggly little bit. And then all the way through till 6 now. Okay, there we go. This is probably the longest sheet I've ever done. If it gets too big to handle at any stage of the rolling, what you can do is you can simply cut it in half, cover the other piece with cling film, and then carry on, roll to the thinness you want with the half, and then do the same with the other half. I quite like working the big sheets because it makes me feel sort of like a proper Italian mama pasta maker. So this is it, all lovely and rolled out to level 6 on my machine. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this to one side across the countertop here. I'm going to flour both sides again, and then I'm simply going to repeat the entire process with our second half of dough. Okay, so I have just finished with the second half, and trust me, I know that it can be long and boring, especially that kneading part at the beginning where you have to put it through, you know, 10 times and then another 10 times, but trust me, it is so worth it to get a beautiful, smooth, gorgeous pasta dough like this. And what you can do, what to do with it now. So what you can do is you can cut it into sort of, say, spaghetti-like lengths, and then hand cut it into tagliatelle or spaghetti, or you could use, I have some other cutters for this that will make spaghetti or tagliatelle for you. You can cut it into lasagna sheets, you can make tortellini out of it. Like I said, I am going to make some ravioli out of it, which will be coming up in a video very soon, in pasta week, as I've now decided that we're going to have on the blog. I would say, unfortunately, I was just trying to think of telling you how much this would feed. Unfortunately, there's no like easy conversion. It's not like 100 grams of pasta flour will feed one person. I find that 300 grams of pasta flour, or a dough made from 300 grams of pasta flour, I'm always stumbling with my words, of pasta flour, will feed 4 very, very comfortably. I mean, these are pretty big sheets. So a greedy 4 bowls will be fine for that. But I mean, it's something that depends on how thin you roll it, how absorbent your flour is, how stretchy and glutinous your flour is, how much it's going to stretch out. So you might need to have a play with it. But the other thing is you can also air dry fresh pastas. So you can cut it into your pieces. If you cut it into spaghetti, put this side down to show you. Imagine, I'm not going to cut this piece, so I'm going to use it, but imagine the piece is only, you know, that big. If you cut it into your spaghetti sizes, as you cut it into spaghetti, you can hang it on, I was going to hang it on that, but that might go through it. I just use washing line to hang my pasta on to dry. You can, if you're very posh, you can get specific pasta dryers, airers, but you can just hang it over some washing line. And once you've cut it to whatever shape you want it, just leave it out to air dry, and then you just cook it like normal dried pasta. The drier it is, the longer it takes to cook. That's the only difference between it. So don't worry if you've made too much. You can store it, you can dry it out and keep it for a rainy day. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and make some ravioli now. But happy pasta making, and do try it just once.